In my past life, my wedding car suddenly burst into flames. My fiancé, Thorne, to save his delicate adopted sister, Serena, who suffered from claustrophobia, cruelly locked me inside the burning vehicle. He carried the pregnant Serena out of the inferno, towing me through the car window. Serena is pregnant and can't stand the smoke. You're strong, just hold on a little longer. I burned alive inside that car, listening to the crackle of my own flesh, watching their figures disappear, entwined. I died consumed by hatred. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of our cruise engagement party. Serena had once again fallen into the water, and when she was rescued, her baby bump was clearly visible. This time, facing the pressure from the entire Thorne family and Ethan's desperate pleas on his knees, I let out a cold laugh and shattered the entire event. I opened my eyes. The salty sea breeze hit my face. The deck was baggy lit, and the champagne tower glittered, reflecting the harsh lights. I looked down at my dry, couture gown, my fingertips digging sharply into my palms. It hurt, not the agonizing pain of being consumed by fire, but a vivid, stinging pain. I was back at the cruise engagement party for the Thorne Davies alliance. Splash! A loud splash interrupted my thoughts, followed by a terrified scream. Serena fell overboard. I looked up, unsurprised to see my devoted fiancé, Thorne. Without even stopping to take off his jacket, he plunged into the icy seawater. His movements were so frantic, as if a second's delay would cost him his life. The surrounding socialites and guests instantly gathered, gasps and whispers erupting. Mr. Thorne is way too concerned about his adopted sister, isn't he? Well, they did grow up together at the orphanage, and I heard Serena's always been frail. But it's his engagement party, leaving his actual fiancé high and dry. What's that about? I stood my ground, my eyes cold, watching Ethan cradle a drenched Serena as if she were a priceless treasure, bringing her back onto the deck. Serena was wearing a thin white dress, which now clung to her body, soaked through by the seawater. Because of this, her normally flat stomach now had an undeniable curve. Ethan tore off his suit jacket, wrapping it tightly around her, his voice trembling. Serena, don't be scared. I'm here. Serena leaned into his embrace, her face ghost white, her eyelashes fluttering. One hand instinctively moved to cover her stomach, then she turned her head and retched violently. The gesture was too obvious. The whispers around us instantly died down, and everyone's gazes became sully weighted with meaning. Eleanor, Ethan's mother, pushed through the crowd, her face a thundercloud. What are you waiting for? Get Serena to the lower deck lounge. Don't let the media get a shot of this. On my family side, my father, Richard Davies, also frowned. He turned to his assistant. Go. Make sure no media cameras on this cruise get anything. I looked at Apollo on the deck, a slow smile spreading across my lips. Still the same old act. It was like this in my past life too. No matter how scandalous the situation, the first reaction was always to cover it up, then push me out to clean up the mess. Dr. Davies. I pushed through the crowd, my voice clear and cold, cutting through the sudden silence on the deck. If someone isn't feeling well, don't bother dragging them downstairs. Let's examine them right here. The ship's Dr. Davies blinked, instinctively looking at Eleanor. Eleanor's face tightened. She lowered her voice, a sharp warning in her tone. Scarlet, it's your big day. Don't make a scene. I met her gaze without flinching. Precisely because it's my engagement party, we need to get to the bottom of this. Serena is the Thorne family's adopted daughter, and her status is unique. Falling into the water and retching at an event like this, shouldn't there be a public explanation? What if she has something contagious? Who's going to explain that to all these VIPs if they get sick? Ethan held Serena, his brows furrowed deeply. Scarlet, can't you see she's already suffering? Why are you pushing her? I stared at him, my eyes devoid of warmth. Am I pushing her? Why are you hiding something? The words hung in the air, and a deathly silence fell over the deck. Dr. Davies knelt to examine Serena. Serena's eyelashes fluttered violently, her fingers digging into Ethan's shirt. I saw it clearly. She'd been awake the whole time, just pretending to be unconscious. After a moment, Dr. Davies moved her hand from Serena's wrist, her face ghost white. Eleanor immediately reached out. What's wrong? Is she just cold? Sweat beaded on Dr. Davies' forehead. She swallowed hard before speaking. From her pulse and her current state, Serena, she appears to be pregnant. Pregnant? The word exploded like thunder on the deck. I heard gasps all around me. Pregnant? Serena doesn't even have a boyfriend. Where would she get a baby? What kind of nervous Ethan is? Could it be? The whisper surged like a tide, impossible to suppress. Eleanor panicked, her voice sharp. That's ridiculous. It's Wendy, Dr. Davies. You must be mistaken. Get her out of here. Hold on. I took a step forward, my high heels clicking crisply on the wooden deck. Mrs. Thorne, if Serena's pregnant, we need to know who the father is right now. If someone coerced her, or if there's any hidden relationship, we'll call the police. The ship hasn't docked. No one's getting off. At the mention of calling the police, Serena finally dropped her act. She abruptly opened her eyes, her gaze bloodshot, tears streaming down her face. Her voice hoarse, she pleaded. Scarlet, please don't call the police. It's my fault, all my fault. I looked down at her. Who's the father? You tell us. She bit her lower lip, stubbornly avoiding the main point, just burying herself deeper into Ethan's arms, crying her eyes out, a picture of distress. Ethan, please don't say anything. Please. Ethan, such an intimate address. I suddenly felt incredibly sick. I pointed at Ethan. She's your adopted sister, yet she's carrying a child with no known father. You're defending her, telling her not to be scared. Ethan, what are you so afraid of? Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed. He looked at me, then down at Serena, trembling in his arms. The next second, he did something that stunned everyone present. In front of all the elites, the media, and our business partners, he dropped to his knees before me. Scarlet. He looked up, his eyes full of pleading. Serena has always had a hard life, and her health is poor. That night, I had too much to drink. I lay down. Boom, went the room. Everyone erupted. Foam flashbulbs erupted, flashing wildly. Even with Richard Davies's people trying to stop them, there was no way to contain the spread of this earth-shattering scandal. The baby is mine. Ethan clenched his jaw, admitting it. But I love you, Scarlett. I'm begging you, for the sake of this child. I looked at his pathetic figure, kneeling on the ground, and felt nothing but utter absurdity. He was kneeling to me, but every single word was for Serena. Serena sobbed, shaking her head, struggling to kneel as well. No, it's not Ethan's fault. It was just that once I didn't mean to. Eleanor's eyes flickered. She immediately adopted a solemn, almost empathetic expression, her words coming out in a rush, a plan forming. Scarlett, this has become a mess, but the baby is innocent. You can raise it. You'll still be Ethan's wife, his only wife. No one will ever take your place. I slowly turned to Eleanor. I'll raise it. Yes. Eleanor seized onto it like a lifeline. Serena won't compete with you. She just needs a safe place to stay. After you two marry, Ethan will be a good husband to you, and the Thorne family will take care of all the gossip. Several Thorne relatives nearby also chimed in, offering their advice. What old money family doesn't have a little scandal? Men will be men, sometimes they just play around. If you want to be the lady of the Thorne family, you'll have to think about the bigger picture. Ethan publicly now for you. Do you really want to destroy Serena? I listened to their nauseating remarks and suddenly laughed. My laughter in the cold air sounded unusually sharp. They weren't feeling sorry for me. They simply thought that since the scandal was out, I should just quietly take over. To hide Serena's shame, to secure an heir for the Thorne family, to let Ethan keep up his devoted boyfriend act. And even later, I'd have to raise a secret baby for them, pretending nothing had ever happened. In my past life, I actually believed their lies. In my past life, for the sake of the Thorne-Davies alliance, I swallowed my anger. I thought if I just conceded, Ethan would settle down. After we married, he was indeed attentive and sweet to me. He'd freak out if I even frowned, until I deliberately caused car accident. My waiting car caught fire, the door jammed shut. I was pinned under the twisted seat, my face covered in blood. Reaching out to him, Ethan saved me. But he turned and smashed the window on the other side, pulling out Serena, who only had a minor scrape. The fire grew to thick smoke choking me. I pounded desperately on the car window, staring at him in despair. He stood in the safe zone, watching me struggle in the flames, sized devoid of any form of warmth. Scarlett, Serena is pregnant and suffers from claustrophobia. She can't stand the smoke. You're strong. Just hold on. The fire department will be here any minute. He just stood there, holding Serena, watching as the flames consumed the entire car. Before I died, through the inferno, I saw Serena, nestled against his shoulder, flash me a triumphant, chilling smirk. It turned out, all his kindness to me was just to keep the Davies family on their side, to make me willingly become Serena's human shield. Snapping out of my memories, I looked at Ethan, still kneeling, my eyes utterly cold. You expect me to accept your secret baby with your adopted sister? You expect me to walk into your family as the city's laughingstock? I took a step forward, looking down at him. Ethan Thorne, who do you think you are, to expect me to cover up your mess? Ethan's face changed instantly. Scarlett, I'm on my knees begging you. What more do you want? What do I want? I turned, snatched the microphone from the nearby MC, and cranked the volume to max. Everyone here today is a witness. My voice echoed through the cruise ship's broadcast, across the entire sea. The Thorne family knew full well that Ethan Thorne and his adopted sister, Serena, were secretly carrying on an affair and getting pregnant. Yet they still went through with the alliance with the Davies family. When the truth came out, their first reaction wasn't to admit fault, but to force me to swallow this insult, to force me to raise a secret baby. In their eyes, my only purpose, Scarlett Davies, was to cover up for this disgusting pair. The feedback from the microphone spewed over the speakers, a sharp, metallic wail that vibrated against the glass of the cruise ship's grand ballroom. For a second, the only other sound was the heavy hum of the ship's engines, pushing through the black ocean water. Then the silence spoke. The guests, hundreds of the city's most influential politicians, old money heirs, and corporate giants, stared at me. The cameras at Richard Davies' security had tried to surprise their leads once more, their lenses catching the cold, blue light of the deck. Scarlett, Eleanor Thorne's voice lost its polished, aristocratic warmth. She took a step toward me, her silk gown rustling, her face contorted in a mix of panic and fury. Turn that off. You are hysterical. You've had too much to drink. I haven't touched a single drop of your champagne, Mrs. Thorne. I said, my voice steady, carrying clearly through every speaker on the ship. But perhaps, my fiancé has. Or maybe he was perfectly sober when he decided to turn his own sister's room into his personal playground. Scarlett, please, Ethan whispered from the deck. He was still on his knees, his wet hair plastered to his forehead, looking up at me with a face full of pathetic, calculated agony. You look like a man begging for his life, but his hand was still firmly tugged around Serena's waist, keeping her anchored to his side. Don't do this to us. Don't do this to Serena. She can't handle this stress. Then she shouldn't have climbed into your bed, Ethan. I replied, my gaze dropping to Serena. Serena was shivering under Ethan's jacket, her fingers clutching his white shirt, so hard her knuckles were pebble. Her eyes, wide and bloodshot, darted toward the crowd of socialites. She had spent years cultivating the image of a delicate, saintly orphan, the fragile flower the Thorne family had rescued from the streets. Now they were looking at her as if she were a parasite. Richard, Eleanor turned to my father, her voice carrying a sharp edge of desperation. Are you going to let your daughter destroy the alliance over a youthful indiscretion? The Davies group needs our shipping routes. You know, what happens if we pull out of a highway expansion project? My father, Richard Davies, stood by the entrance of the VIP lounge. His face was a mask of cold calculation. He was a businessman first, a father second. In my past life, when the scandal had been quietly swept under the rug, he had patted my shoulder and told me to think of the company. He had forced me to accept the humiliation for the sake of the Davies Group's stock price. This time I didn't give him the chance to choose. The highway expansion project, I said, speaking into a microphone again, is funded 60% by the Davies Group. The Thorne family's only contribution was the operational license, a license that is currently under review by the Municipal Maritime Board due to your family's undisclosed debts. Richard's eyes snapped toward me, a sharp glint of surprise flaring in them. He didn't know I knew about the Thorne family's hidden financial crisis. In my past life, I had discovered it too late, after we had already merged our assets, and even had used our capital to pay off his family's gambling debts and offshore losses. Is this true, Eleanor? Richard's voice was low, carrying the weight of a hammer. Richard, it's a minor liquidity issue. Eleanor stammered, her face turning an ash gray. We were going to discuss it after the wedding. You were going to use my family's money to drown your own fires. I interrupted, walking slowly toward the edge of the deck. I stood right above Ethan, looking down at his white shivering form. I reached down to my finger with the 5-carat emerald engagement ring. The symbol of my past life's chains shined mockingly. I pulled it off. Is it got it? No. Ethan reached out his hand, his voice a desperate whimper. We can fix this. I love you. I only did it because she was lonely. She was scared. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything to me, Ethan, I said. I opened my hand. The ring fell. A green spark cutting through the dark air. Before it hit the black ocean water below was a silent, insignificant splash. The engagement is off, I announced, my voice carrying to the very back of the deck. The Davies family will be initiating a full audit of all joint ventures, with the Thorne Group starting tomorrow morning at 8. Every contract, every lease, and every penny we have ever advanced to your family will be accounted for. Scarlet, Eleanor screamed, stepping forward. Her hand raised as if she wanted to strike me, but my father's security detail was already moving. 2 tall, broad-shouldered men in dark suits stepped in front of Eleanor, their expressions expressionless, their presence a physical wall. Richard Davies took a slow drag from his cigar, blew the smoke into the salty air, and looked at Eleanor with a cold, hollow smile. My daughter has spoken, Richard said, his voice flat. The gala is over. Captain, turn the ship around. We are returning to the harbor. The return to the harbor was a quiet, agonizing procession. The Thornes were relegated to the lower deck crew cabins, kept away from the guests by my father's security. Serena's claustrophobia apparently didn't act up when she was forced into a damp, windowless storage room to avoid the cameras of the journalists waiting at the pier. When the ship finally docked, the pier was already swarming with reporters. The news had traveled faster than the ship. A live stream video of my broadcast had been uploaded to the city's main social media platforms by one of the guests, and by midnight, Thorne family taboo scandal was the #1 search term in the country. I walked down the gangway first, my head held high. The train of my dry white couture gown sweeping over the damp wooden planks. Scarlet, is it true that Serena Thorne is pregnant with her brother's child? Did the Davies Group know about the Thorne family's debts before the engagement? Are you going to sue the Thorne family for breach of contract? I didn't answer. I kept my gaze fixed on the black Mercedes waiting for me at the edge of the pier. Behind me, my father walked with a heavy, measured step, his assistant shielding him from the flashing bulbs of the cameras. We got into the back of the car. The heavy leather door shut out the noise of the crowd, leaving only the soft hum of the air conditioner. You've grown up, Scarlet, Richard said, not looking at me. He was staring out the window at the reporters scrambling to get a shot of the Thorne family as they were escorted out under blankets. You didn't console me before you made that announcement. If I had consulted you, father, I said, my voice cool, you would have asked me to wait until the harbor expansion contract was locked in. You would have told me to ignore the pregnant sister, marry the man, and take control of the Thorne Group's assets through the back door. Richard let out a dry, short chuckle. And what's wrong with that? It's a queen way to acquire a competitor. It's not queen when the competitor is a rotting corpse, I replied, turning my head to look at him. The Thorne Group is hollow. They have mortgage there, fleet 3 times over. If we had proceeded with the alliance, we would have been dragged into their bankruptcy proceedings within 6 months. I didn't just save my reputation tonight, father. I saved 50% of the Davies Group's capital. Richard's hand, which had been tapping his knee, stopped. He turned his head, his sharp, gray eyes studying my face for a long moment. Where did you get the audit reports? He asked. I have my sources, I said, keeping my gaze steady. In my past life, I had spent 5 years running the Davies Group after my father's health failed. I knew every contract, every hidden ledger, and every dirty secret the Thorne family had used to bleed us dry. I didn't need a source. I had the memory of a ghost. Whoa, Richard sighed, leaning back against the leather seat. The harbor project is dead. The Thorne family shares will be auctioned off by the bank within a month. We need to find a new partner to take over the maritime logistics side. We don't need a partner, I said. We can buy their fleet directly from the liquidator for 20 cents on the dollar. I've already drafted the acquisition proposal. It's on your desk. Richard stared at me, his eyes wide with a rare, genuine shock. You. He shook his head, a slow, appreciative smile appearing on his lips. You really are my daughter. I thought you were soft, Scarlet. I follow you. We're like your mother, always dreaming of love and white weddings. I had a dream of a white wedding once. I whispered, my gaze drifting to the dark, wet streets of the city passing outside the window. But it burned. Within 2 weeks, the Thorne family went from old money loyalty to social pariahs. The banks, alerted by a public withdrawal from the alliance, moved to a terrifying, predatory swiftness. They called on all of the Thorne group's outstanding loans. The family's accounts were frozen, their luxury cars repossessed, and their private villa in the northern suburbs was put up for auction. Even worse was the public shame. The story of the adopted sister's secret pregnancy was a permanent fixture on the entertainment blogs. No respectable company wanted to be associated with Ethan. He was stripped of his position on the municipal maritime board, and his former business partners refused to take his calls. In the past, Ethan had always been a man of pristine, arrogant elegance. Now he was living in a rented double-bedroom apartment in the industrial district. The smell of grease and wet laundry his new reality. I sat in the high-back leather chair of the DB's group's executive office, looking at the private investigator's weekly report. The photo showed Ethan walking out of a cheap grocery store, carrying a plastic bag of instant noodles. His hair was long, his face thin and haggard. Beside him, Serena was holding her stomach, her face pale, her cheap maternity dress looking worn and dirty. They're fighting, the investigator, a quiet man named Alan, said as he stood in front of my desk. The neighbors say they hear screaming every night. The girl wants to go to a private hospital for her delivery, but the boy doesn't even have enough money to pay the rent. He's been working as a logistic clerk at the docks under an alias. A logistic clerk, I murmured, a cold smile touching my lips. How fitting. The great Ethan Thorne, who used to look down on the dock workers from his luxury yacht, was now carrying their clipboards. And Eleanor? I asked. She's staying with a distant relative in the countryside, Alan replied. He refuses to see them. She blames Serena for destroying her life's work. Keep watching them, I said, closing the folder. The play is just entering its second act. A few days later, my assistant knocked on the door. Miss Davies, there's Mr. Ethan Thorne downstairs. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's been standing in the lobby for 3 hours. The security team wants to know if they should remove him. I looked out the glass window of my office. The rain was beating against the glass, making the city below look blurry and dark. No, I said, standing up. Let him up. But make sure the security cameras in the hallway are recording. When Ethan walked into my office, I almost didn't recognize him. He had lost at least 20 pounds. His custom-tailored suit was gone, replaced by a cheap, damp trench coat that smelled faintly of tobacco and white wool. His shoes were stuffed, his hands rough and chapped from the cold air of the docks. Scarlet, he said, his voice hoarse, his eyes bloodshot as he looked at me. I sat behind my desk, my posture perfect, my hands folded over the polished mahogany. I looked like a queen sitting in her castle, while he looked like a beggar who had called through the night to reach my gates. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Thorne, I said, my voice flat. Scarlet, please. He took a step forward, his hands trembling. I know you hate me. I know you think I'm a monster. But we've known each other for 5 years. We were going to be married. You can't be this cold. 5 years, Ethan, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. And for 5 years, you were sleeping with your sister while planning to use my family's money to pay off your debts. Who is the cold one here? I was trapped, he cried, his face twisting in a pathetic, desperate attempt to play the victim. My mother. She forced me to take over the company. I was under so much pressure, and Serena. She was the only one who didn't demand anything from me. She was just there for me. And now, I raised an eyebrow. Is she still there for you? Ethan's face went stiff. The mention of Serena's name seemed to trigger a deep, festering resentment in his chest. She's changed, he muttered, looking down at the carpet. She does nothing but cry and scream. She blames me for losing the villa. She says her baby is going to grow up in a slum because of me. Scarlet, she's not the girl I thought she was. On the floor, his shadow was slumped and distorted, mimicking his weak, pathetic posture. He was whispering. If only Scarlet would take me back. I can divorce Serena, give her some money to disappear, and keep the David group's support. I just need to make Scarlet feel sorry for me. I wanted to laugh. He was exactly the same as in my past life. A man who would sacrifice anyone, for anyone into the flames, just to save his own skin. In the past he had sacrificed me for Serena. Now he was ready to sacrifice Serena for me. I can help you, Ethan, I said softly, leaning forward. His eyes lit up with a sudden, wild hope. He took 2 steps toward my desk, his fingers gripping the edge of the wood. Really? Scarlet, you still care? You'll help us. I'll help you. I corrected him, my voice carrying a terrifying gentleness. The Davies Group has just acquired the Thorne Group's former shipping fleet from the liquidator. We need a general manager for our maritime operations in the Southern District. The salary is generous, enough to pay off your personal debts and buy a decent apartment. Ethan's butt-ache. A general manager, you'll give me that position. On one condition, I said, pulling a document from my drawer and pushing it toward him. You must sign this personal liability waiver. It states that if there are any losses, any accidents, or any irregularities in the shipping logs, under your watch, you will be held personally and criminally responsible. Ethan looked at the document. His hand was shaking. He was a desperate man, and desperate men do not read the fine print. They only see the golden key, not the trapdoor beneath it. And then what about Serena? He asked, his voice trembling. The position comes with a private apartment in the Port District, I said. But The lease is in your name only. Will you choose to bring into that apartment is your business, but the company will not tolerate any family drama that affects your performance. Ethan's eyes flickered with a dark, calculated coldness. He understood what I was implying. He picked up the pen on my desk. I'll sign, he said. 6 months passed. Ethan had thrown himself into his new position with a frantic, desperate energy. He wanted to prove his worth, to claw his way back into the high society that had spat him out. But he didn't know that the Southern District maritime operations were a trap I had carefully designed for him. The ships we had acquired from the Thorne group were old, their hulls thin, their maintenance logs falsified by Ethan's own family years ago. I had purposefully delayed the retrofitting process, keeping the vessels in active service under the guise of operational efficiency. And Ethan, eager to please me and secure his bonuses, had signed off on every single voyage checklist without a second thought. Meanwhile, his relationship with Serena had reached the boiling point. Ethan had moved into a luxury apartment provided by the company, but he had left Serena in the rented flat in the industrial district. He only visited her once a week, throwing a small envelope with cash on the table before leaving to attend business dinners or drink with his new colleagues. Serena's baby had been born, a thin, sickly little boy who cried constantly. Without the Thorne family wealth, the higher-paid nurses and doctors, Serena was forced to take care of the child herself in a damp, noisy apartment. One rainy evening, I was sitting in my car near the port, watching the dark waves crash against the concrete pier. My phone vibrated. It was Alan, my investigator. Mysterious. Alan's voice was tense. Serena had just left her apartment. She's carrying the baby. She's heading toward Ethan's apartment in the port district. She looked unstable. She was shouting at herself on the street. Where's Ethan? I asked. He's at his apartment, Alan replied. He's celebrating his quarterly bonus with a few of his colleagues. The party's been going on for 3 hours. Let's go, I said, starting the engine. The curtain is rising on the third act. When we arrived at the apartment building in the port district, the rain had turned into a torrential downpour. The wind was howling off the ocean, rattling the glass windows of the high-rise buildings. I stood in the shadow of the lobby, watching through the glass doors. Serena walked in, her wet hair clinging to her face, her cheap coat soaked through by the rain. She was holding a bundle of blankets tightly to her chest. She looked like a ghost that had wandered out of the sea. She pushed past the doorman, her voice shrill and desperate. I'm his wife. I hollered to see him. Let me up. A few minutes later, a loud, crashing sound echoed from the top floor. I took the elevator up, Alan following quietly behind me. When we stepped out onto the penthouse floor, the door to Ethan's apartment was wide open. The sounds of music and laughter had stopped, replaced by a violent, chaotic screaming. Inside the waiting room, Ethan was standing near the glass coffee table, his face flushed with alcohol, his silk shirt unbuttoned. Several of his colleagues, wealthy young men and women from the logistics industry, were standing back, their faces filled with shock and disgust. Serena was standing in the center of the room, her wet blankets dripping water onto the expensive carpet. She had thrown her baby's bottle at the wall, the milk splashing over a painting Ethan had just bought. You left me in that song, Serena shrieked, her voice shaking with a terrifying, hysterical rage. You left me with a sick baby while you drink champagne with these people. I gave up my life for you, Ethan. I let everyone call me a whore for you. Get out. Ethan roared, his face turning a dark, dangerous red. He took a step toward her, his fist clenched. You are embarrassing me. I told you I am working to secure our future. You are ruining everything. Work. Serena let out a sharp, mocking laugh. You're not working. You're just Scarlett's dog. She threw you a bone, and you went to her like a pathetic hobby. She hates you, Ethan. She's using you. Shut up. Ethan screamed, lunging forward. He grabbed her by her armpits, fingers digging into her skin, and began dragging her toward the door. Let go of me, Serena screamed, struggling against his grip. She raised her hand, her long, unmanicured nails scratching his face, leaving 3 deep, bleeding lines across his cheek. Ethan let out a grunt of pain, his eyes suddenly filling with a dark, primal fury. He raised his hand and struck her across her face with a resounding crack. Serena stumbled backward, her body hitting the glass coffee table. The glass shattered under her weight, a sharp sharp cutting her arm, her blood mixing with the spilled champagne and milk on the floor. The baby in her arms let out a shrill, terrified wail. The guests gasped, several of them begging out of the apartment immediately, not wanting to be associated with a domestic assault. I stepped into the doorway, my high heels clicking crisply against the wooden floor. Is there a problem here, Mr. Thorne? I asked, my voice cool and clear. Ethan froze. You looked at me, then down at his hand, then at the bleeding, weeping Serena on the floor. The alcohol in his system seemed to evaporate, replaced by a sudden cold panic. Scarlet. He stammered, his voice shaking. She came in here, attacked me. I was just trying to protect myself. I walked into the room, my gaze passing over the broken glass and the blood on the floor. Finally, I looked at Serena. She looked up at me through her wet hair, her eyes filled with a mixture of hatred, envy, and a sudden, desperate realization. You, Serena whispered, her voice shaking. You did this. You wanted us to destroy each other. I didn't force your brother to hate you, Serena, I said softly, looking down at her. And I didn't force him to leave you in that apartment. He made those choices himself. Just like he made the choice to lock me in a burning car in my past life. Serena's eyes widened to the size of saucers. She didn't understand what I meant by past life, but she understood the chilling, absolute coldness in my voice. Mr. Thorne, I said, turning to Ethan. The company cannot tolerate this kind of scandal. Your position as general manager is suspended pending an internal investigation. And since you signed the personal liability waiver, we will also be conducting an audit of your shipping logs tomorrow morning. Ethan's face went completely white. He scowled. No, please, don't do this to me. I have nothing left. If you fire me, the band will take everything. Then you should have thought about that before you raised your hand in my building, I said. I turned and walked out, the sound of my high heels echoing down the hallway, like the ticking of a clock counting down to the final hour. The final storm broke 3 days later. The Maritime Safety Board, tipped off by an anonymous source which was of course myself, launched a sudden unannounced inspection of the Davies Group's Southern District fleet. They found 3 vessels with severe structural damage, their maintenance logs forged, their safety valves welded shut to save on repair costs. Because Ethan had signed off on every single log as the general manager, he was arrested at his apartment by the port police on charges of corporate flight safety, negligence and endangerment of life. He was released on bail after 12 hours, but his passport was seized, and his, as it told he was a ruined man, facing a 10-year prison sentence. And Serena, seeing that her golden goose was finally cooked, took the remaining tiles when Ethan safe and tried to flee the city with her baby. But Ethan found her. The confrontation happened at a private shipping warehouse near the southern. Here, a place Ethan had used to store his personal belongings after his apartment was repossessed. The night was dark, the wind pouring down in a blinding sheet of water. The wind was howling off the harbor, making the heavy metal doors of the warehouse rattle and groan. I stood on the second-floor observation deck of the warehouse, looking down through the iron railing. The space below was filled with stacked wooden crates, rusty shipping containers, and a single vintage sedan, the very same car Ethan had bought for our wedding in my past life, which he had kept in storage as a symbol of his former wealth. The heavy door of the warehouse was pretty open, and Serena stumbled in, carrying her baby in a small suitcase. She was showing her waist pale, her eyes darting around the dark space. Ethan, she called out, her voice echoing hollowly against the metal walls. Know you're here. Let me have the keys to the boat. I need to leave. The police are looking for me too. A figure stepped out from behind the stack of crates. It was Ethan. He was wearing his old damn trench coat, his face covered in stubble, his eyes wild and bloodshot. He was holding a metal wrench in his hand, his knuckles white. You took my money, Ethan whispered, his voice shaking with a terrifying quiet rage. You took the last of my savings, Serena. You were going to leave me here, to go to prison while you ran away to the south. You hit me, Serena screamed, backing away toward the vintage sedan. You ruined my life. If it weren't for you, I'd still be the daughter of the Thorne family. I wouldn't be living in a slum with a sick baby. You're not a Thorne, Ethan roared, stepping closer, the wrench swinging in his hand. You're a parasite, a stray rat my mother brought home. I gave up my life for you. I gave up Scarlet for you, and this is how you pay me back. He lunged forward, grabbing her by her coat. Serena let out a shriek, dropping her suitcase. She struggled against his grip, her fingers scratching his face again, but Ethan was stronger. He pushed her back against the side of the vintage sedan, her body hitting the metal door with a heavy thud. The baby in her arms was crying hysterically, the sound cutting through the noise of the rain. Ethan stopped. Serena wept, her voice finally breaking into a genuine desperate. Here, I'm your sister. I'm the mother of your child. Please don't do this. Sister. Ethan let out a dark, hysterical laugh, his face completely distorted by madness. You're my curse, Serena. From the day you fell into that pool at the engagement party, you've been dragging me down into the mud. If you're going to destroy me, then we'll go down together. He grabbed her arm, dragged her toward the passenger side of the sedan, opened the door, and shoved her inside. No. Ethan, let me out! Serena screamed, her fingers clawing at the window as he slammed the door shut. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulled out a thick iron chain, wrapped it around the door handles of the car. Unlocked it was a heavy padlock. The car was a vintage model, its windows thick, its lock mechanisms mechanical. With the chain wrapped around the outside handles, there was no way to open the doors from the inside. Serena was trapped. She pounded desperately on the glass window, her face ghost white, her voice muffled by the thick metal of the car. Ethan, let me out. I can't breathe. The smoke, the dust. Ethan, her claustrophobia, the very illness she had used to frame me, to make Ethan lock me in the burning car in my past life, was now her actual, living nightmare. He was hyperventilating, her chest heaving, her fingers bleeding as she scratched at the glass. Ethan stood outside the car, his face expressionless as he watched her struggle. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, plastic can of kerosene, the fuel he had prepared to burn his personal documents before fleeing the city. Began pouring the liquid over the hood of the car, the sweet, heavy smell of fuel filling the damp warehouse. If we die here, Ethan whispered, his voice calm, almost peaceful, the police won't have anyone to arrest. It's a clean ending, Serena. Mr. Thorne. The queer, cold voice cut through the dark warehouse. Ethan froze, the empty can of kerosene slipping from his fingers and clattering to the concrete floor. He turned slowly, looking up toward the observation deck. I stood under the single yellow light of the deck, wearing a black trench coat, my hands tucked into my pockets. My face was calm, my eyes as cold as the sea. Outside, Scarlet, Ethan whispered, his eyes wide with a sudden wild confusion. Why are you here? I came to see the ending, Ethan, I said, my voice carrying a soft, terrifying gentleness. The ending you designed for me in my past life. Ethan stared at me, his mind struggling to process my words. Past life. Scarlett, what are you talking about? I love you. I did this for you. Look, I've cut up Ted, the woman who ruined our marriage. She's inside. I'm going to get rid of her, and then we can be together. Ethan, I said, a small genuine smile of pity appearing on my lips. Did you really think the safety inspectors found those faulty valves on their own? Did you really think the bins found your offshore accounts by accident? Ethan's body shuddered. The puzzle pieces clicked together in his head, his face turning an ashen gray. You, he whispered, his body trembling. It was you from the very beginning. You planned all of this. Yes, I said, from the moment I opened my eyes on the cruise ship. I wanted to see how long your eternal love for Serena would last when you had to pay the price for it. It turns out, it lasted exactly 6 months. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a small silver lighter, the one my father had left on his desk, and flipped the wheel. A small yellow flame danced in the dark air of the warehouse, reflecting in my cold eyes. No, Scarlett, please. Ethan fell to his knees on the wet concrete, his hands raised in a desperate, final plea. I'm sorry. I was a fool. I was greedy. But the baby is innocent. Don't do this. I looked at the baby in Serena's arms through the glass window. The child was silent now, exhausted from crying, curled up under the blankets. I turned my head slightly. Alan stepped out from the shadow of the stairs, carrying a pair of bolt cutters. He walked down to the car, quickly clicked the chain on the driver's side door, pulled the door open and reached in. Serena, half conscious from hyperventilation, didn't have the strength to fight back. Alan took the bundle of blankets containing the baby from her arms, stepped back, and walked out of the warehouse. The baby was safe. He would grow up in a quiet, private orphanage funded by the Davies Group, far away from the poison of the Thorne family. But Serena remained in the back seat, her eyes wide with terror, her body shivering. I looked down at Ethan, who was still kneeling, his face covered in tears. Your turn, Ethan, I said. I dropped the silver lighter from the observation deck. It fell, a small, bright spark cutting through the dark air, before it hit the pool of kerosene on the concrete floor. Flush. The fire ignited instantly, a wall of yellow and orange flames flowing up around the vintage sedan. The heat was immense, the thick black smoke rising toward the metal ceiling of the warehouse. Serena let out a shrill, muffled scream from inside the car, pounding on the glass as the flames lit the metal doors. Ethan screamed, trying to scramble backward away from the heat, but his coat caught a spark of the flame. He rolled on the floor, screaming in agony as the fire consumed his sleeves. I stood on the observation deck, watching the inferno below. The heat was warm on my face, a vivid, tingling warmth that drove away the last of the icy sea breeze from the cruise ship. The crackle of the wood, the smell of the burning paint, the sound of their desperate, muffled screams. It was the exact same symphony I had listened to before I died in my past life. But this time, I was the audience. I looked through the flames at Ethan, who was rolling on the floor, his face distorted by pain and terror, looking up at me through the smoke. Scarlett, save me. He whimpered, his voice barely a whisper through the roar of the fire. I looked at him, my eyes devoid of any warmth, and delivered the same words he had told me through the car window all those years ago. Ethan, you're strong. Just hold on a little longer. The fire department will be here any minute. I turned, my black trench coat sweeping behind me, and walked out into the cool, clean rain, leaving the ashes of the Thorne family to burn behind me. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the city washed and bright under the winter sun. The news of the sudden poor warehouse fire occupied a small, insignificant column on the third page of the morning paper. The police report stated that a ruined logistics manager and his sister had perished in an accidental fire, caused by improper fuel storage. There were no suspicious circumstances. I stood on the deck of my private yacht, looking out at the endless blue horizon of the ocean. The wind was cool, carrying the fresh, clean scent of salt and pine. The water below was calm, reflecting the bright, golden light of the morning sun. My phone vibrated. It was my father's assistant, Miss Davies. The acquisition of the Thorne Group's remaining assets has been finalized. The harbor expansion project is resuming under our sole control. Your father is waiting for you in the boardroom to sign the final documents. I'll be there in 10 minutes, I said, sliding the phone into my pocket. I walked to the railing of the yacht, looking down at the clear, deep water. The sapphire necklace steamed eternally, the burning car. All the chains of my past life had been dissolved, washed away by the sea and consumed by the fire. I was finally free. I took a deep breath of the fresh, salty air, a slow, genuine smile appearing on my lips. I turned my back on the harbor, stepped into the cabin, and set my course toward the future.